Welcome back to Making Imagination, the podcast that looks at animated filmmaking one craft at a time. I am your host, Wes. On this episode, we're going to take a little trip down memory lane into the era of Spielberg animation. Steven Spielberg is significant in the history of animation. Probably he doesn't get the credit that's due to him because he's significant in the history of cinema, which often outshines his work in animation. But in the 80s and 90s, he was a big player in the animation space, really giving Disney a run for their money. And I sat down with one of his producers, Steve Hickner, who was there during all the Emblemation films. That's Spielberg's animation company. And then when Spielberg kind of turned Emblemation into DreamWorks animation, Hickner went along for that ride as well. Now, one of the things that surprised me is you'll hear as you listen to the conversation that there were times where I would begin to ask Hickner a question, and there might be some kind of an assumption that I'm making. He would immediately kind of blow it out of the water with incredible stories and things that happen on these projects. Things that just kind of blew me away. So I hope that you're just as surprised as I was to learn some of the things that I learned. Yeah, this conversation with Steve Hickner was truly a delight, as he was a big player in a lot of those films. This is that conversation. Balto, it's kind of a unique story. It's sort of based on a true story. Can you talk about kind of why that story? How did
Yeah.
you?
Actually, at the time, one of the development executives at Amblin, Doug Wood, Bonnie Radford was in charge of Amblin Animation, and Doug Wood was the development executive there. And Doug maybe had read a book or something and thought this had a good story to it, an interesting idea. And so he was the one who brought it to us. And to be honest, Stephen had some trepidations with it.
Really?
Because he said visually, I see black dogs and white snow. He said, I'm not seeing the visual component to this movie in my head when I think about it. And so we had Hans Bacher, who was the art director, do some stuff, and Hans can spin straw into gold. It doesn't matter what it is. Hans is brilliant. And he did some paintings that were fantastic, little tiny ones. And he basically sold the movie that this wasn't going to be black dogs and white snow. And what we discovered was we had to paint the backgrounds in oils. Because in the day it was all done, it wasn't digital. Most studios like Disney or whatever did gouache, or gouache is the British, I think, would call it. But that would not give us what we wanted. And we had done watercolors for for American Tail 2. That was all done in watercolors before Lilo and Stitch did that. So we did that one. And that also couldn't give the nuance, but oil paintings could. But there's a reason why nobody does oil paintings. One is that it's a difficult medium. Two is that it takes forever to dry. So for animation, if you've got a deadline, you got to wait for that oil paint to cure before you can put the cells on it. And it takes a long time. So we needed that period of time to do it. But the advantage was oil paints stay wet for a long time, which means you could go back into it at a later time and touch it up in a way that you can't with the others. You just paint on top. But with watercolor, in oil paintings, it was still wet. So all of the paintings, all the backgrounds in Balto are done in oil paintings. And I don't think there are too many features, certainly no American ones that I know, that are done in that way. And since we did it in London, the British are willing, and the Europeans are willing to do anything. They're fearless.
Wow. Did you have to was there a lot of trial and error before we said, okay, the trouble here is the kind of paint we're using, or was that pretty quickly like, no, this is not?
No, it was like the question was, could everybody paint in oils?
Wow.
Because they had been painting and the answer was, a painter can paint. And there was I don't recall any issue with that.
Huh.
Um,
Yeah.
moving and the same people moved from watercolors to gouache um, to oils. So watercolors on American Teal 2, gouache and acrylics on We're Back, and oils for Balto.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Huh. That's fascinating. So, when you're doing a feature like Balto, and it comes time to casting your crew, casting your cast, I mean, you've got, acting wise, you've got guys like Kevin Bacon, um, and
Well, it was
Phil
interesting.
Collins.
Kevin Bacon only came in the very last, and he re-looped the entire movie. None of Balto was animated to Kevin Bacon.
What?
None of
What?
it.
What?
Not a single line in Balto was animated to Kevin Bacon. It was animated to another actor. And because we wanted Kevin Bacon and he wasn't available because he was making another movie. And so after we'd animated the whole film,
Oh my.
um, uh, Steven thought, the voice could be pushed more. And we said, well, we originally wanted Kevin Bacon. Let's see if he's available. And now he only needed a weekend. So he could come in 2 days
Huh.
and loop the whole movie. And the amazing thing is he is so good at looping that in some cases he made the lip sync better than the original animation to the dialogue.
Yeah.
So he post synced the entire movie in a very short time, and he was terrific at it. In fact, it was so good that we said, you know what? We never completely were in love with our Jenna voice. I wonder if Bridget Fonda would do it, because we had the same kind of thing um,
No.
with someone else, and Bridget Fonda had become a big star. And they said, I wonder if Bridget Fonda would do it. So
What?
she said yes. So she went back and looped the entire Jenna.
Oh my gosh.
So the two leads were not animated to the track. They completely looped it, but they're so good at it. And it wasn't like they needed a gazillion takes to do it. I think because Kevin Bacon doesn't he have a band or something? He's
Oh, I don't know.
musically inclined, and I think
Huh.
that he heard the rhythm of this thing and he could just duplicate it. But he could change the acting and keep the lip sync. And the same thing with
Whoa.
Bridget Fonda. So both of those actors completely post sync the whole movie.
Whoa. I mean, were you guys nervous? That's like your two lead. I mean, you're
No,
going.
because we already had this thing. All it could do was
Yeah.
uh, get better.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it was funny. We'd never done that before. Like at least anything I've ever worked on to say, oh well, that actor wasn't available, we couldn't get him. But then at the end, go, I wonder if we still could get him. And the answer is we
Whoa.
did.
Whoa. Well, that's
And
surprising.
let me tell you a story about Kevin Bacon
Yeah.
because he's such a good guy that at the end of the day when we did it at Universal Studios in LA, the end of the day when we had finished, we were coming out of the studio, the recording studio, and the tram, the tour was going by at the end of the thing. And he said, excuse me, gentlemen. And and he said he stopped, walked over to the tram, flagged it down, and took pictures and went with all the people in the tram and stayed there and talked with them, and then came back. And we're so my reaction was, wow, that was so nice of you. And he goes, nice. He said, those are the people who pay my salary. So that was his attitude,
Whoa.
that like he was grateful to be in the movie business and he appreciated the audience. And he did that.
Wow. Holy cow.
So
Wow.
so he was a great guy. Not just was
Wow.
he a good actor, he was a really great guy. And I think that's why he's had a long career. I've never worked with him again, but he was really very pleasant and accommodating, and he really cared about the people, the fans.
Wow. No, that's amazing. I want to kind of walk backwards a little bit and ask you, how do you remember when Steven Spielberg decided to get into animation, and then how did you kind of get linked up with him uh, for all those features?
Well, Steven's foray into animation preceded me because that was Don Bluth with American Tail when it came out in 1986. So how that exactly happened, that I don't know. You'd have to ask Don Bluth. But I do know is after Roger Rabbit, he wanted to make his own animation studio. They were talking about that and setting it up in London so as not to compete with the same talent that LA already had. And he said, we have all these people that if in London that we could do that. Now, Dick had no interest in doing that, Dick Williams, because he did Roger Rabbit so he could do The Cobbler and the Thief. That was his life's work, and that's what he wanted to do. So it had nothing to do with the relationship with Amblin or Disney or anybody. It's like, all I want to do is do this movie, and I agreed to Roger Rabbit to help raise my profile so I could do Cobbler and the Thief.
Wow.
So he went off and did that, and so it gestated for about a year, and I kept calling Frank Marshall at Amblin, and finally it took a year, but it happened.
Wow.
And that was June 1989. So that was right around this time of year. I think I landed in London June 11th, 1989. So it's right around now, 37 years ago.
Wow. Wow. That's pretty crazy.
I know.
Huh. Yeah. Okay. So then one of the curious castings to me is you also have Phil Collins in Balto, which it's like pre-Tarzan. I mean, I know he has a successful music career, but I guess I'm a little bit surprised to find him in that role.
That must have been Simon Wells as the director's idea. I forget how maybe that they had heard Robert Watts, who produced with us, was really well connected in London. He knew everybody, and it's very possible that he spoke to Phil Collins, who said, I've got kids and I'd love to do an animated film. And that's how that came. My suspicion is that's how that happened.
Okay.
Because that's how we got John Cleese, because up to that point, John Cleese had never done animation. We were the first ones to do that. And Robert Watts made that happen. Just because he knew everybody in London, because that's where he lived. He was a British producer.
Huh. Yeah, you mentioned John Cleese. So one of my childhood darlings was An American Tail 2. I loved Fievel Goes West. I still do. But you're inheriting you're coming after an established picture, a successful picture. Was there any kind of particular pressure, or what was the atmosphere like kind of doing a sequel to a picture you hadn't created?
I think in all candor, we had too much hubris. That I think, Bluth's version, American Tail 1, was a massive hit. But Bluth's movies have certain affectations to them. You probably know the cross-eyed, the potato chip tongue. You know these things I'm talking about. Certainly in the animation world, we know about that. And kind of like a sweetness to it. And we wanted to be a little more edgy. And I don't think, and that was, because we were all very young. Simon was 27. I was 32. I think Phil was 33. We were all young. And that's why I say that hubris, if we had been smarter, I think we should have stepped back and said, wait a minute, what did the audience like about the first movie? Because they didn't just like it, they loved the American Tail 2. It won an Oscar for the song. Many children have very fond memories of that movies. And I don't think we paid enough
Hmm.
homage to it. It has a very different feel to it. And I think had we have done that, we could have still done the things that we wanted, but I think we would have had a bigger hit. We also had the complete disadvantage that I think we came out a week after Beauty and the Beast, which, in my opinion, at least to me, is my favorite animated movie in
Oh
like
wow,
the last, I don't know, since Jungle Book, maybe the last new one. I still love Beauty and the Beast.
wow.
So we were buried by Beauty and the Beast. There was no oxygen in the market after that movie came out for us, and that really hurt us. But um, all deference, Beauty and the Beast is a masterpiece and is 10 out of 10. And so to have to concede to that, then we had the same thing 2 years later. We came out like I feel like days after Nightmare Before Christmas. So with We're Back. So we could not, I mean, Disney was firing on all cylinders at that time. By the time Balto came out, we were a year after. Thankfully, we did not come out a week after Lion King, which was like, I don't know, June or something, 94. That would have completely killed us. But we came out a year later, which what might have been after Hunchback probably came out in the summer 95. I can't remember exactly, but I think Hunchback might be the one in summer 95, and we came out Christmas. I don't know what came out. Oh, I know what came out Christmas 95.
Oh, Toy Story.
Yeah, the best,
Yeah,
the Snow White of the computer animation era. So yeah, there we go.
yeah.
That there was truly no oxygen in the room. So in the case of our three movies, to me, I would say in the last 40 years, we came out against two of the very best
Mm.
and I might even say, for me, Toy Story is the best movie in the last 40 years in animation. I think it's Snow White.
Mm.
It like people are always talking about AI and what's AI going to do, and my thought is always AI is a tool. It's nothing. The computer is a tool. It's
Mm.
nothing without the person. What made the computer animation a hit was John Lasseter and Pixar with Toy Story. It wasn't the computer. It was the way that John Lasseter and his team built, as I say, the best film for me in the last 40 years coming out of animation.
Yeah.
And so until there's a John Lasseter using AI, it's just going to make, the computer was flying logos until John Lasseter.
Huh. That's interesting. Yeah, you're there. You're making these pictures. What's this time like for you, who's there as an industry insider? You're creating, films that are coming out at the same time. And you mentioned Beauty and the Beast. That one is the first animated picture nominated for best, picture. As someone who's working in the industry at this time, what's that like for you and emblemation?
Well, I've always felt and still do that a rising tide lifts all ships. Um, the success of Disney in fact, going back even further, frankly, the success of American Tail 1, I do not think there would have been the Disney second renaissance of the early 90s, late 80s without American Tail 1. American Tail 1 showed that animation could make a lot of money and play with the heavy hitters. And so that's why I say I don't think we gave enough deference to that movie. But American Tail 1 really was a watershed movie and showed Disney, hey, why is that not our movie? And so they did Oliver and Company, and after that, and then we did way better with Little Mermaid on the next one.
Hmm.
Then they did that sequel, Rescuers Down Under,
Yeah.
which I don't think was a creative reach. But then they did Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, um, and what was in between? So 91 is Beauty and the Beast, 92 is
Pocahontas.
Aladdin. Yeah, Pocahontas, and then 94 was Lion King.
Yeah.
And then Jeffrey was left and went to DreamWorks, and Disney didn't recover
Hmm.
until, I mean, I would say they went 10 years into kind of a tailspin. They did some really good 2D work. Like I love Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah.
I love that movie. And in fact, looking back at some of those, what we would have thought of as like lesser Disney movies, God, I would love to have something like that
Yeah.
today. I mean,
Yeah.
I really like Princess and the Frog, and I really like Treasure Planet is a much better film than I think people gave it credit for it. Its day. The same thing with Hunchback of Notre Dame,
Oh,
and so um, the Lion King had set the bar so high it was hard for anybody to do until Toy Story come out in '95, and then it was all CG. The audience had lost its interest in 2D.
yeah. That's interesting. It almost seems like a perfect storm or an imperfect storm. After The Lion King, you get um, both Katzenberg leaving Disney, but also Toy Story happens and kind of changes the game, uh, kind of at the same time, which is interesting. Uh, yeah. So for An American Tail 2, um, how did you guys approach story for that? Did you
Well, we had very little development time because Simon Wells and Phil Niblink
hmm,
storyboarded the whole thing themselves
whoa.
while they were directing. So all of the storyboards were, so I mean they started in like June storyboarding, and by I feel like September we were in animation. So we did not do the iteration. It went really from the script to the boards to animation. We did not do enough iterating of the storyboards,
Hmm.
and that's where the magic happens in the storyboarding, in the best sense. I think, in fact, now there is a more reliance on um, script into storyboard now, and I think the movies have suffered from it. I look at movies today, and they feel the DNA is television, not movies.
Mm,
I look
mhm,
at something like Finding Nemo, Monsters, Inc., Toy Story, all the of Pixar 1.0. In those movies, the DNA is Inside Out. The DNA is motion pictures, and
mhm,
I feel like now
mm,
it's more
mm,
feels like illustrating dialogue. It
mm,
doesn't have those great set pieces like Toy
mm.
Story had. It doesn't have pizza, like where's Pizza Planet
Yeah.
in some of the newer ones?
Yeah.
Where is the and I could just go through the movies and say these were great set pieces. Where the equivalents today, and they're not there.
Yeah. As someone who's been, in the industry for a long time, um, creating films that people would remember today, uh, what do you think has changed? Do you think what do you think has changed?
They don't watch movies. They
Hmm.
watch television. You can see it. I mean, what's the biggest hit this weekend? The Amazing Digital Circus, YouTube thing. It's not. They're not. So that's going to become influential
Hmm.
and influence the movies, and it's not going to come out of uh, Lawrence of Arabia
Hmm.
or Star Wars or Close Encounters, or take your pick. It's going to
Huh.
come out of television, and you
Hmm.
can see it. I mean, I won't name names of movies,
Sure.
but you can see them. They
Yeah.
feel like they're script driven. They feel like they're dialogue driven. They feel like, and some of it is a very clever writing.
Hmm.
I will mention this because it is absolutely not this. Is the Spider-Verse movies?
Oh,
those things are dazzling and like unbelievably creative. So those things are intimidating. They are so good. And I feel like K-pop
Mm,
was was full of invention and had some incredibly fun um, animation and movie centric like set pieces. So there is still some there. It does happen, but it doesn't happen in the same regularity like that. I would say like Zootopia 2 had it. With, that one felt like a movie.
mm,
I love that movie.
huh. Yeah, no, that's really interesting you say that. 'Cause that seems to make sense. That seems to resonate. Um, yeah, fascinating. Um, so we're back. This is my earliest theatrical memory. I remember we went into the theater and we showed up late, so we had to sit in the front row. And so I just had
Wow.
this massive. That's my earliest theater memory. But I loved We're Back, and I showed it to my kid decades later, and he loved it. What was sort of the way into that as a story? Why that one?
That was a production wise was a problematic movie. I think most of the people who worked on it will not have stories of how much fun it was to make it. We really and it was our first digital movie. So we had gone from 2D, hand drawn inking and painting, literally inking and painting the paint trays, Xerox, all that, to doing it digitally. And we had a lot of teething pains because we did not have the deep pockets of Disney and this huge IT staff. We were we were a very small kind of like guerrilla band of people. So to make that leap was hard. And but fortunately the people were the artists were great about it, but we had a lot of teething problems.
Mm,
And that we did it. We were in the script, and I had gone and seen Joe versus the Volcano,
mm.
and I really like that movie, and I still like that movie. It's a really quirky movie. It's written by John Patrick Shanley, who did won the Oscar for Moonstruck. And I said to Steven, I go, how come we never get somebody like that in animation? And so he asked John Patrick Stanley because Joe versus the Volcano was an Amblin movie. And he said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And so he was working on that Alive, the movie for Frank Marshall,
Mm.
the one he directed about the Andes survivors of the soccer team. So he was in
Oh wow.
between, like he hadn't started yet on that. That was going to be his next. So we were in between that.
Wow. It seems like one of the common denominators within some of the movies we discussed, but a number of movies that you worked on as producer, but also as director, is Simon Wells.
Uh-huh.
What, how did he kind of come into the picture, and how did you see him shifting from film to film?
Well, Simon's one of my oldest friends. We've worked with Simon since 1980, August 1987. I met him on
That's almost 40 years,
Airway,
man.
in, yeah, almost 40 years, an Airway in Glendale. He was on Roger Rabbit because he was one of Dick Williams' top guys, and he did storyboarding and animating. And so there was a new unit in LA for Roger Rabbit to try to get it done because the movie was beyond what anybody had ever made. There's never been anything like Roger Rabbit, and there will never be again. I mean, it was a once in a lifetime experience, that movie, because as they said, it was three movies at once. They shot a live action movie, then they made an animated movie, and then it went to ILM where they had to do all these opticals. And so it was an effects movie. So it was logistically really complex to put that thing together because it didn't have the computer or anything like that. But it had the best people in the world. I mean, Dick Williams is one of the best animators in the world. And for the commercial thing and for the type of thing it was, he probably arguably was the best in the world to do that. And so Simon was like his protege or one of his proteges. And so that's how Simon got in. So I met Simon back then, and then we ended up working together on American Tail 2 because Steven saw his talent. And Bob Zemeckis told him, said, this guy's really good. And Steven saw it too. And so that's how. And then we ended up working together in Prince of Egypt. And I just completed a thing that's at the Comcast, make a plug for the new project, a Comcast Technology Center in Philadelphia. They have this sphere where they have this kind of immersive ride experience, 7 minutes for How to Train Your Dragons. And directed it, and Simon storyboarded it.
Huh. Oh, wow. One of the things I love about particularly the Amblimation movies, but others as well, is just the really gorgeous animation. Is that something that Simon brought to those projects, or?
That's something that this animator, Kristof Serrand, brought.
Oh.
Kristof Serrand was ground zero of the world famous Gobelin school in Paris.
No.
Yes. Kristof was one of the very first graduates ever. And when we were looking for people, our portfolios, we would be looking at the stuff and they go, oh, this is really good. Who did that scene?
Oh.
And they said, oh, that's Kristof. And we do it again and again. Every time we would see people's portfolios, the best shots were all done by this guy, Kristof.
Mm.
And we go, how do we get in contact with this guy? He doesn't speak English. Anyway, one Friday afternoon at Elstree Studios in London, this guy walks in with his portfolio and he says, I'm Kristof Serrand. and what had happened is there was another movie going on at the same time in Battersea called FRO 7. And Kristof, they had sent Kristof to, paid for him to come to London to be head of animation on that movie. And he had heard about us. And so he took the train up to us. And then when he saw what we were doing versus what they were doing, he made the smart decision to always, which is what I would say to young people, always follow talent. Follow talent. Talent is how you get to be better, and getting to be better is how you make more money and have a more successful career. Anyway, Kristof saw that, and we hired him. And once we hired Kristof, he was the magnet. That because he also taught at, it was based back then, it was called CFT, the Center for Formations of Technology. It wasn't called Gobelin yet. He taught there, so he knew all the good students. So he would bring them to our studio. So we became, that became the farm system for us and seeded us. And the reason that there's so much beautiful animation in Prince of Egypt, and some of the credit has to go to those fantastic French animators from Gobelin.
Wow! I you say that I'm completely flabbergasted and surprised. But on another level, that kind of makes sense because I have a coworker who's from France, and I tell her that, like, in my opinion, Gobelin is the greatest animation school in the world. If I were someone of importance, I would just look at student portfolios and say, "You're hired." But you guys did that, which is amazing.
Yeah, and recognized it before anybody else, way before anybody else was there in the game, because it was so obvious.
Wow.
Because we gave a lot of people chances because we were the new studio. And so people got to do things for us that they would never have gotten to do at other places. But in fact, that helped build us. And that provided the foundation when DreamWorks started. Certainly, we got some fabulous talent from Disney. Not the least of which was James Baxter. But we also had some fantastic animators from France. So we had like the best of both.
Wow. Yeah, I do want to move from Amblin to DreamWorks, but first I'd be curious, just from an insider's perspective, Roger Rabbit, um, the personalities you have working on that, Richard Williams, Steven Spielberg, Zemeckis, it is already crazy.
And then you've got Ken Ralston, who was the head of ILM uh,
Oh gosh,
there, and Steve Starkey also from ILM. So I mean, you had the cream of the crop of ILM
gosh, working on that. I mean, you guys
back
are
in the
great.
days when they were at the top of their game. You're talking 1986,
Oh my gosh, yeah,
85, like
peak everybody.
Right after Back to the Future, Goonies, 84 was Gremlins. Before they would do Last Crusade, which was what, 89. So right in the sweet spot.
Wow. Were you guys, I mean, I'm sure you knew you were breaking ground, but were you aware of how this thing would come out and how it would impact the culture, or was it just sort of we're trying something new, we don't really know? Was there a sense of insecurity or a sense of pioneering?
I knew it was going to be good. Um, that was no doubt to me. I remember when I first got to Disney, I asked Eric Larson, who was one of the nine old men who animated, Peg and Lady in the Tramp and many a Flower from Bambi. I asked Eric, I said, when you were working on Snow White, did you know what it was?
Hmm.
And he said, we never would have worked the last 6 weeks for free if we didn't. Yeah, we knew what it was. And when, so later, when I was on Roger Rabbit, I said, oh, this is what Eric felt like.
Hmm.
This is it. This is something very unusual. And everybody knew it. Sometimes it was a lot of people's first movie they ever worked on, but I had worked on some things, but I could tell this was, and I've never worked on anything quite like that again. It was groundbreaking in every way, every single day.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I heard a story. Um, I heard a story. Richard Williams, I guess, and you can corroborate this or not, that there was a desire to sort of keep a stagnant camera because it would be so difficult to animate into a moving camera. And Richard Williams, I guess, said something like, "Oh, they're just being lazy. We could do that,"
Yeah.
and then did.
Yeah.
Is that
Well,
is
I
that?
think what it was is Bob Zemeckis didn't. He used to use Pete's Dragon as like profanity. Like we don't want this to be like Pete's Dragon. So that was like the rock bottom. Let's not have this look like Pete's Dragon. Which was all lock offs and stuff. So he wanted to move the camera like he does in Back to the Future and any of his other movies. And um, Dick was fearless. Because he did anything on a commercial. That's why his commercials are so good. So he was completely fearless. And said, of course we can do that. And they did a test where they proved it would work. And yes, it could work, but there's a really big difference between doing a commercial and doing 80 something minutes of an animated film. Where essentially you're delivering a commercial every week. So
Oh,
it's like, that great commercial that you loved and you're so proud of? Well, we're going to do one every week like that. That's
oh,
what we have to do in order to finish this movie. So that's where the
oh,
the trouble was
oh my
is,
gosh.
yes, you could do it, but you have to do it 80 weeks 80 times in a row, not once, 80 times,
Wow.
you know, and
Wow.
not 79, but 80, because you
Oh,
can't release it at 79. You have to do it every single week.
wow. Dang. Dang. Um, that's incredible. So eventually, I think Amblimation does just the three pictures and then goes away. But Spielberg is clearly
Well,
not
we're
just interested.
absorbed into DreamWorks.
Okay, okay, yeah. I was curious. How does all that happen? Because yeah, clearly you guys are still interested in animation. Because then you go on and do The Prince of Egypt. Can you talk me through that transition and how that came about?
Yeah, as Disney had just done The Lion King, and Jeffrey was getting a lot of credit for it. And I think certain people did not like hearing that Jeffrey take so much credit for it. And he probably um, was deserved, in my opinion, him taking the credit. But anyway, they fired Jeffrey. And so then he got together with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen to form DreamWorks, and they wanted to do make animation a big part of the company. And Jeffrey couldn't take the Disney people, but Steven had a whole bunch of people of his own. So that started as like the nucleus with the additional people that Jeffrey was able to entice, like for Brenda Chapman and Lorna Cook, and there was Kathy Altieri and Richie Chavez. There was a whole bunch of people from Disney that they took, or not took, but they enticed to come. And so you had that core group from Disney, because at the time that we were starting on Prince of Egypt, we were still finishing Balto at Amblimation, so none of those people could come over yet. So the department heads were all like top Disney people.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Kristof Serrand. I think I know his name from The Prince of Egypt. So I guess you guys are able to bring him along. Can you talk about a little bit? I've heard from Brenda Chapman, kind of her version of getting onto The Prince of Egypt. She started out as kind of an interim director, and then discovered, actually, this is really about story, and I know story, so I'm interested and I'm going to stay. And then you and Simon Wells come along as co-directors. What from hearing kind of her side of things, it sounded like you each brought something special to the table, and that you guys had a great symbiosis.
True. I was the only one who had the advantage of, I had worked with Brenda at Disney on Little Mermaid.
Oh.
And I knew Simon from Amblin. So I was lucky in that I knew both of them at different points. And Brenda had never met Simon, and Simon never met Brenda. But I actually, because I had worked at Disney and at Amblin, had done both. But yeah, I think and it was it took a while to gel, but it was so much fun to work on that movie, and there was so much to do that we just had to get it done, and we were trying to solve the movie. I don't think any of us at first thought, oh, we're doing the 10 Commandments. Like that's like really hard material. That's not it wasn't anything like any of us had done before. It was not in the 10 Commandments. It's certainly not The Lion King or Beauty and the Beast, and it's not anything like what we had done. So we had to figure out what the tone of this thing was. And we had this one screening, I believe it was in July, where we had put jokes in it and stuff, and we watched the movie, and we came out and we said, we all felt this. All the jokes have to go. It just feels wrong. This has to be a drama. And then when Jeffrey met us in the Amblin conference room after, he goes, so more comedy? And we went, actually, Jeffrey, no, I think we need to take out all the comedy. And originally we were going to watch the movie, do some fixes, and then show it to Jeffrey. But after we saw that, we said, there's no point in spending another minute with this. We need to get all of us on the same page that this is a drama. And so I think the next day Jeffrey saw it, he completely agreed. That this had to be that. There's a little bit. I mean, we tempered Steve Martin and Martin Short, but they were going to be originally in our concept, they're going to be a lot broader. And it's more like the dramatic Steve. It's more like Spanish Prisoner Steve Martin than the Three Amigos, Steve Martin.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Yeah, I see you guys did steer. There's still comedy. It's just more subtle. I think when Steve Martin is like, "Oh, my new thing," is
Yeah,
sort of a subtly
he's
funny.
a little more. I
Yeah.
mean, Martin Short, and there's a few who are a little more contemporary than like Patrick Stewart is never allowed to go there. Helen Mirren is never allowed to go there. You know, Jeff Goldblum just a little bit. But Michelle Pfeiffer can never go there. She can never go to be contemporary. She has to be period. Same with Sandra Bullock. These people, they're the pillars of keeping the movie in line. Val Kilmer also can never
Hmm.
not be period, not be true to the thing. He can't be anachronistic.
Hmm.
Whereas um, Steve Martin can say thing. You can't do that with Moses. You can't do that with
Hmm.
Michelle Pfeiffer, or
Hmm.
it's certainly not with Patrick Stewart and Helen Mirren. They can't talk like that. We actually had uh oh, I've just skipped his name. Nicholas Meyer. Nicholas Meyer came in as a writer because our script was a little bit too contemporary. Our characters, the way they talk,
Hmm.
and that was clear after that screening that we needed someone to pull us back and get it more period. And so they
Hmm.
brought in Nicholas Meyer, who I love Star Trek 2. I mean, I love Star Trek 2. It's one of my I think it's not only a great easily the best Star Trek movie. I think it's a great movie. Even if it weren't even named Star Trek, it would be good. And
Awesome.
he said, you need to take some of these lines and push a more iambic pentameter, like
Hmm.
Shakespeare. And he took a line and he did that right there. He just said, like, for
Hmm.
instance, this line, and he did it. And it was like, wow, now it sounds period. And
Wow.
he was the one who did I Am the Morning and Evening Star. That's
Oh,
Nicholas Meyer's type of
wow.
stuff. He gave it that gravitas. He only
Yeah.
worked on it for a short time, but it was incalculable what he did because
Wow.
he pulled the wheel back, drew the wheel back to get us in. This is where you're allowed to be in terms of the way they talk.
Hmm.
They can't say like thing, whereas you know Hotep and Hoy could.
Fascinating, man. When I do watch The Prince of Egypt, it's such a level of artistry and craftsmanship and specificity that it seems to me to be a film that would be difficult to do kind of the live action remake because there's something so specific about the artistic approach to it. Maybe that's naive and optimistic of me.
That has never that has never made people shy away if there could be money made.
Fair enough.
But
But
I don't think anybody looks at Prince of Egypt as a big money maker. Like it's not Lilo and Stitch. It's not How
sure,
to Train Your Dragon,
sure.
or it's certainly not Lion King.
But I had read that some of your major influences for the picture were David Lean, Gustave Doré, Claude Monet. Did you guys approach this one with kind of at a higher level that you're saying that this really needs to be? Um, I mean, you talked about pulling back the jokes and making it more of a drama and making it more period. Artistically, were you also sort of striving for something new there?
I don't know so much about that, but we had those three influences that you mentioned. The film, as if it was shot like it was David Lean,
Mm,
with the scale of Gustave Doré, painted by Claude Monet. That was the
mm.
brief. That's what we were trying to do.
Okay.
And so, what was good is everybody knew the job. If you're in layout, your job is to make your stuff grand, like David Lean and Gustave Doré. The
Mm,
gravitas of Gustave. That's your goal. The animators, your acting is going to be like a David Lean. It's going to be like
Mm.
Lawrence of Arabia, Brief Encounter. It's going to be David Copperfield. It's going to be those kinds of things. And the painters had we had the best background department. Oh my God, was it good?
Mm.
Um, Brenda was in charge of that. She could speak more than I ever could, but oh my
Mm.
God, the work that came out of that was truly astounding.
Mm.
Basically, you just sit there and genuflect every day and go, oh my God, this is so good. These guys can really paint. And that was the last film that DreamWorks ever made, painted on backgrounds, painted the backgrounds painted on paper. After that, it was all digital. Last one. So
Wow.
it has its own thing, tactile thing about that.
Yeah. What became of all those backgrounds? They just go in the
They're in the uh, they're in the archive and literally in a mountainside somewhere,
wow.
buried in a
Wow.
mountain to protect them.
Wow.
So they still exist.
Wow. We're coming short on time, and I do want to talk a little bit about B movie. So, you have directed The Prince of Egypt with Simon Wells and Brenda Chapman. Now you're, how do you get onto B movie? How does that project come about?
I wanted directly and try went to Ann Daly and I said, I'm interested if something comes up, I'd like to do it. Uh, in terms of winning the lottery, it could not have been better. Um, Basically, although I really enjoyed Prince of Egypt, B movie is much more like I'm much sillier than I am Prince of Egypt. Although I loved working on Prince of Egypt. I mean, it was one of the best things ever. But my sense sensibilities are that, and to work with Jerry Seinfeld was like a gift.
Hmm.
Um, I wasn't as familiar with the Seinfeld show as I would have been because I had lived in England from 1989 until 1994, almost 95. So
Hmm.
during the
Oh.
beginning of the Seinfeld phenomena, I wasn't there. So I didn't have any sense of that. Meanwhile, on the other side of the years before the internet, that there's this other phenomena going on. There was, although the editor,
Huh.
Nick Fletcher, used to have episodes of the Seinfeld sent over on tape so he could watch them. He had some connections in the States. I think it might have been Dave Spafford from Roger Rabbit.
Hmm. And one of my favorite things about that movie is the color palette that you guys landed on. But just in reading about the project, it sounds like finding the right look for that world, making that world sounded kind of
Yeah, it
tricky.
was the it was a lot more difficult than we thought because the first thing we said it's going to be a B version of New York, and so that was the first thing we did, a B version of New York, and then we built storyboards like that, and then we found when you cut between New York with Vanessa and Ken to the Honey World, the Hive that looks like New York,
Mm,
there was no contrast. There was
mm,
nothing. And
mm,
frankly, it looked like what had happened was Barry had become a giant
mm,
in the world because now everything was normal sized instead of tiny. And it really did not work at all. So we realized this has got to be much more caricatured. And Kristof Lutret did a lot of work to get that to kind of make it what the B world would look like with Alex McDowell.
mm. Was that a difficult picture to cast?
No, it couldn't have been easier because Jerry, like he says, to be I'd like to have in this movie so and so, and makes the call and yes, so like anybody we wanted, and then he just brought all of his friends. Um, it was so much fun working with Jerry Seinfeld. I can't even begin to articulate it. At the end of the movie, I said to Jerry, Jerry, you have ruined my life because all I want to do now is work with you for the rest of my life and have this every day. And that's not going to happen. Now I'm going to have to go. And interestingly, I found other things, but it was great. And to have that chance to watch the level of comedians that we were allowed to work with during that time was truly a gift. Basically, the best people on the planet. And so, I like even a small role like the woman who works the tram, Megan Mullally. I love Megan Mullally, and she's so perfect in that excitable, that this isn't this great the way we live, and she's like the perfect casting. And like Alan Arkin as these guys are like comedy icons as like the the father and the Kathy Bates, who I remember we for some reason we had like an hour down, and I got to talk to Kathy Bates about acting and like her roles and how and things, and I loved talking with her. Same with Megan Mullally, because she was going to do Young Frankenstein on Broadway, and I love Young Frankenstein, and I love musicals. I had seen her in How to Succeed, and with Matthew Broderick, and of course we got to work with Matthew Broderick, who I had loved since I saw him do Brighton Beach Memoirs when he was a kid and I was a kid. So it was like one after another of these people who are like fantastic. And John Goodman, my God, the guy can do anything. He moves from comedy to drama effortlessly, that he can be absolutely silly, like the Raising Arizona, and then he can do a chilling performance, as intimidating. And you can see that like in The Big Lebowski, where he literally will go from kind of being silly to frightening in an instant.
That's true.
He's such a good actor.
Yeah.
And I was so lucky to get to work with John Goodman 3 times in my career. Once on We're Back.
Yeah.
Once on Father of the Pride, and then once on B Movie.
Huh. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. So just a couple minutes left, so I'll make this my last question. You have produced these feature films. You've also directed. What, in a nutshell, if you were just describing to students, what would you
Which
say?
I do all the time because I teach it. I'll make a plug. I teach at Ringling College in Sarasota, Florida.
Amazing. And you have books too. Great books, digestible books, I should say. But what would you say that you learned in a nutshell from directing versus producing?
You know what? I'll tell you, and this may seem like a cliche or something, but when I first started in management in 1986, when I was on Sport Goofy, that I started doing production managing on that, and I realized I don't know anything about being a manager, nothing. And so I began to read books about managing. And I read this one book, and it was the best book on managing I had ever read in my life. And it said in the first page that if you give the people what they want, you will get what you want. And they said, if you understand this principle, you can put this book down now because you're done. You'll be a good manager. And I kept reading it. And then at the end of the book, it says, at the end of the book, we said that if you give the people what they want, you'll get what you want. And he said, we're going to modify that now. We're going to say, if you give the people what they need, you will get what you need. And they said, people want $1 million. They need enough to live on. So what people want and what people need aren't exactly the same thing. But If you give them if you fulfill their needs, they will help you fulfill your needs.
Hmm.
And that is the lesson I learned that permeates every part of your life. And the more I realized that what makes you a good manager, a good leader, is what makes a good person. Is that the people who are good people and look out and help other people and are advocates for other people, those are the best directors. Those are the best people to work for. Those are the happiest people. And I will say, in my experience in life, the happiest people I've ever met are the ones who are constantly helping others. And the most miserable people I ever met in my life, the people who are unhappiest, are the ones who focus on themselves all the time. So the more you give, in today's very divisive time, but that's actually, in fact, why I'm teaching, is to pay back all the people who helped me, because in my career, I would have been nowhere without all the people who helped me. Starting with my parents, all the way through, I have had incredible mentors and advocates who helped me. And without them, I would have achieved absolutely nothing. And so the only possible way I can pay back these people is to try to pay it forward to the next generation.